guys, I'm Kanto and welcome to another weekly Pokevlog. So lately I've been doing sort of character spotlights of the Kanto characters, and I was going to go all the way through up to Unova and do all the sort of the main characters in the games, but that will take forever. That will take so long to do, I've been thinking, and also it's quite boring because all the things I've been able to say weren't very interesting and probably things you already know because you can't say like very much about one sort of character. So what I decided to do was, rather than character spotlights, I'm probably going to do regional spotlights, if that makes sense. I'm sort of going to do a trivia of more fun things that you might not know about each region. So this episode is going to start off with Kanto, and then going to do Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, and Unova. Just going to do an overview of things. In this episode, I'm not going to go over things I said before because that's kind of bore you. So now let's start off. Kanto is actually based off the real world region, which you probably already know. I'm sort of just introducing it. It's based off of a real region, and it's actually the only region in the Pokemon series that's actually got the same name as the real life region in Japan. I mean, Unova is based off America, but all the other ones are based off areas in Japan. And Kanto is the only one that's got the same name, which is quite interesting. It was the first one, of course, though, so they hadn't set in stone what they were going to do yet. So you can forgive them for a few discrepancies. And so the cities in the Kanto region were based off different areas of Japan. For example, I think it was Celadon or somewhere like that was based, or it could be Saffron, was based off Tokyo. So kind of little areas like that, and there was a few ports that were based off too. So it's the only region that attaches to another one as well. Which you'll probably already know, or you kind of probably definitely know. It's attached to Johto, if you don't know. And it's also the only region that's on the east side of the Pokemon League. And this is because it's actually attached to Johto, and the Pokemon League's in the middle. Therefore, one or the other has to be on the east side because the Pokemon League is in the middle. That's quite interesting, though. And I can give you reasons for that later on once I get into that part of the video when I talk about what the Pokemon was originally going to do with the Kanto region. But let me continue talking about what the Kanto region is, and not to talk about what I'm going to talk about. So it's based in like sort of modern Japan. It's based off having lots of technology, and there's a few Pokemon in it that represent like the new man-made sort of I don't know how to describe it, but it's some sort of modern forward advanced in technology sort of region, because they make Mewtwo, you've got the Eevee with the different split evolutions, the DNA and stuff, you've got Ditto, you can transform, the man-made Porygon, and you've got like sort of all the man-made sort of kind of things, if you get what I'm trying to say, as well as the Pokeball, the Master Ball was actually, I think the Pokeball might have been invented in Kanto, I don't think we're actually certain on that, but the Master Ball was actually created in the Kanto region in South Korea. So therefore it's very ahead with technology, and that's kind of what the game is based off in the storyline, because the storyline's kind of following Team Rocket when they make Mewtwo and that sort of thing. So that's in contrast to Johto, which is attached to, like geographically pretty similar, Johto and Kanto. But Johto is actually more traditional and very with myths and things like Lugia and Ho-Oh. Whereas Kanto is very modern and technological, like I said. So that's the kind of the idea that the Pokemon was going for, putting them together. So yeah, Nintendo actually intended on the original games having 190 Pokemon, and you might be wondering where are these extra 39 Pokemon coming from. And these extra 39 Pokemon were actually made for Kanto, but were actually postponed and put into Johto. Because the original idea, what we were going to do with red, blue and green, they were going to put both Kanto and Johto together as one, and that's why they're the only region put together. And also that is why there's sort of two different sides of the same coin, I would say, because they're both linked to the middle, the Elite Four in the middle, and that's kind of why they do share an Elite Four. But the problem with this is that the game coding would take up way too much space to be able to fit into one little game card. Therefore they had to split it off and only have Kanto, and you had to get rid of 39 Pokemon because they wanted to save them for Johto. And that is another reason why Johto has the least Pokemon. It's because obviously the Pokemon were saved from Kanto, and all the save stuff that they didn't put in the Johto games, they didn't put in the Kanto games, they put in the Johto games. That is why Johto seems to be decreased on the number of Pokemon and a few other things. So yeah, the Kanto region was actually meant to be originally with the Johto region, which is quite strange because they didn't actually do that, and it'd be quite strange nowadays if we had the original games merged together into one. And I don't think Pokemon would have been the same if they hadn't been split, because I suppose they started making new regions because of that split. Otherwise they might have actually not started making new regions, which would be quite sad because we won't have the Pokemon we have today. So kind of lost track of where I was on my little note sheet that's quite full of things. I'm going to have to rush through all this. So yeah, the 39 Pokemon that they did get rid of, it was actually programmed into the game, but then they had to get rid of the 39 Pokemon and decided not to include because it would take up too much space. They actually caused Missingno, one of the most famous glitches out of the Pokemon Red, Blue and Green. I can't remember which ones were released where and when, and which one was the patches, because I know one patched the other two or something like that. But yeah, in the original games there was a glitch known as Missingno. This was caused by several Pokemon being taken out of those 39 Pokemon from the Johto region that were actually introduced in the Johto region that were going to be introduced in the Kanto region. So yeah, it was either 39 variations of Missingno, or all 39 Pokemon contributed to Missingno. I'm not quite sure which way around it was, but one of those two. But yes, no, it's one of the most famous glitches. So that's another thing that we wouldn't have if Pokemon was all put into the first game, like Johto and Kanto was put into the first game. So I'm kind of glad that there wasn't enough space for both regions in the one game. Although they did end up putting both regions in the second generation, which was probably because they had more advanced technology and they could do that stuff. But yeah, another sort of interesting thing that Pokemon was going to do but didn't end up doing is that they originally made Marowak, they wanted Marowak to evolve into Kangaskhan, and how it was going to work was that Kangaskhan had a little baby in its pouch, and that was meant to be a baby Marowak, baby Cubone, the first evolution before Marowak, and that was meant to be baby Cubone, and how he got his skull is when the Kangaskhan mother died. The baby wore its skull for protection, which evolved into Marowak, and when Marowak evolved into a Kangaskhan, it would lose the skull because the skull would be too small for its head, and it would carry on a cycle like that. But obviously that seems a little bit harsh for young children, because I think originally Pokemon wasn't actually meant for young children, because there was a few quite harsh things, a couple of them that I will mention over later on in the video. There's a few harsh things originally in Pokemon, and they're all changed to be more child friendly, so I think we could have had a totally different Pokemon game, Pokemon world, if a few things were slightly different. But yeah, they actually got rid of the Marowak into Kangaskhan because that sounds really kind of rather disturbing and harsh. And out of this came another famous glitch, and this is ''M glitch, or people just know it as the M glitch. And it's another Pokemon, it's another sort of a glitched out Pokemon, like Missingno. I think it's slightly different, I think, but it's called M rather than Missingno. So yeah, that would have been kind of disturbing if they kept that, so of course they got rid of it. But unfortunately there's quite a few glitches in the original games, and this is sort of the reason for it. And another thing that people think Pokemon intended to do was that Caterpie, let me start it off the other way around because I think it would make more sense to do this. If you look at Venonat and Butterfree, you'll notice a few coincidences that they're very, very, very similar, that you would think that Venonat would probably be the pre-evolution to Butterfree, because I recently saw this and I was just shocked. I was like, how did I not see this before, because it was so similar. And a lot of people think that Butterfree and Venomoth was switched because the Caterpie and Metapod have lots of similarities with Venomoth, such as the horns, the eyes, the segmented body / the tail, the end. And Butterfree and Venonat has similarities of the antennas, the feet, the mouth, the eyes, and the colour. They were very similar, and I mean the Caterpie, Metapod, and the Venomoth were more ambiguous, but you could definitely tell when you looked that they had similarities. And a lot of people thought that these two were switched, and people didn't know why for quite some time. But a lot of people say that it could be because Ash did catch Caterpie in the anime, and therefore Ash would have to get the Venomoth if it ended up evolving into a Venomoth, and the Venomoth wasn't really an appealing Pokemon, and therefore they decided to make it evolve into Butterfree, so Ash could have a Butterfree and have sort of an appealing Pokemon to children and for advertisements and things like that. But I don't know if the timescale of that will work, because I don't know if the anime was made before the game was released, because if it had been, then that would make sense, but if the anime was released after the game was released, then the original games would have actually been, the Butterfree and Venomoth might have been the other way around, unless they pre-planned it all. I'm not too sure though. But other changes just before the game release was Pokemon names, and I looked over these and some of them were really weird. I'm gonna name a few of them. So Gyarados was originally going to be called Skullkraken. Sandslash was going to be originally called Sandstorm. Here's a fun one. Growlithe and Arcanine were originally going to be called Flamey and Blaze. Quite odd names, yeah, in that order. So Growlithe was going to originally be called Flamey. Arcanine was going to be called Blaze. These all kind of sound like nicknames for Pokemon, probably because we're not used to them, but they do sound quite bad, to be honest. So I'm really glad they did end up changing it, because they were quite weird. And Flamey, not the best of names for Pokemon, I don't think. And actually Eevee's original name was going to be Eon, because of like the Vaporeon, it has all the Eons in the end, which I thought was quite clever. Like the Eon, I don't think is actually too bad, but if we didn't have the name Eevee, we wouldn't have Evolution, so I'm quite glad we have Eevee, because Evolution is a nice little pun people who like the Eevees can say. So let's move on to sort of mistakes Pokemon made in the production of the first sort of series, the Kanto, or the first generation, and that sort of thing. So the first one, it was the Lavender Town music. And now Lavender Town music was made to be scary, and the game makers sort of experimented with the music, and they put like high-pitched clashes of notes in there. And if you're a musician, you'll know that this has like a beating effect. I'm not sure how I can describe it, but yeah, if you're a musician, you'll probably know what I mean when notes clash. It has sort of a beating effect. It's the same idea when you're tuning a guitar and a note, you do these sort of string, comparing the strings like the 5th fret and comparing it to the next open string. If it's slightly out of tune, you'll hear this sort of beating, and you tune it to so there's no beating. If you don't know what I'm on about, don't worry, it's sort of musicians kind of thing. So yeah, and this caused headaches and nausea in children in Japan. It was even suspected that children were committing suicide. Well, this was contributing to kids committing suicide in Japan when the games were first released, so therefore the games were immediately taken in, and the Lavender Town music was lowered at slightly lowered pitch so it wouldn't cause the same effects. But that was a really kind of creepy thing. The Lavender Town music actually caused people to commit suicide, or as they thought. There seemed to be a correlation between them, but it definitely did cause nausea and headaches, which was quite scary actually, as well as the music being quite scary itself, so it fit the purpose, but probably too well. Another quite bad thing that happened with Pokemon was probably something you'll know. The episode in the anime of the first series, the Electric Soldier Porygon, actually caused, I think, hundreds of seizures of Japanese children because of epileptic fits it caused in them, because it was flashing red and blue things. I'm not quite sure, the screen was flashing with red and blue lights, and yeah, it caused lots of seizures in Japan. A lot of people were sent, children were sent off to hospital, and therefore the episode was banned. You can probably look it up on the internet, but I advise you to either watch it in slow speed or take much caution with it, because it caused a fit in you, because it caused a fit with hundreds of kids in Japan. So another screw up, probably not as bad as the other two, was that in the first generation there was a screw up with some typing, and originally the plan was for Ghost to be super effective against Psychic, and Psychic have no effects against Ghost, kind of like how it is now. but there was a screw up and this was the other way around. Well, it wasn't completely the other way around, but they screwed this up and put it the wrong way around. So in the first generation, Ghost had no effects against Psychic, and in the first generation there was no Dark types or Steel types, and the Dark types and Steel types were actually added to balance out Psychic, because Psychic was overpowered in the first generation. So one of Psychic's two weaknesses that it should have had, Bug and Ghost, was actually had no effect against it in the original game, which was kind of bad. That means Psychic actually only had one weakness, which was Bug in the first generation, which was kind of a bad mess up because Psychic was super powerful in the first generation because of that. But they did change that afterwards. Another thing to note about that is the only Ghost type Pokemon in the first generation, or the only three Ghost type Pokemon, were Gastly, Hornsett and Gengar, the three evolutionary lines, the three Pokemon of the evolutionary line. And all of them have the second typing of Poison, and therefore that makes them weak to Psychic. So therefore, Psychic had like super effective moves against Ghost when it should have been the other way around. So that did kind of suck. Another thing to do with typing is that Dratini, Dragonair and Dragonite were the only Dragon types in the first generation, and there was only one Dragon move, which was Dragon Rage, which always does 40 damage no matter what. Therefore, there was no stab damage for Dragon type Pokemon in the first generation. I mean, obviously Dragonite had the Flying type stab, but there was no Dragon type moves that would have stab in the first generation, which was another interesting thing to know. Another interesting thing that you might know, or you might not do, is that Rhydon was actually the first Pokemon made. Its pre-evolution Rhyhorn was made actually after it, but Rhydon was the first sketch. You think maybe Clefairy, because Clefairy was actually meant to be the original mascot for the game. But they changed that to Pikachu because Pikachu seemed more appealing to both genders. But yeah, you'd think it was either Clefairy or Pikachu or who were meant to be the mascots for the game. But no, it's Rhydon, which was quite interesting because Rhydon doesn't really play a big role in the games or the anime, to be honest. But anyway, another very interesting thing that I actually didn't know before today, before looking up a few things about the Kanto region, I was just checking if it was getting dark, because it feels like it's getting darker in my room. So let's hope the lighting isn't too bad. So another interesting thing, like I said, was that Mew was originally a sort of a secret joke made by the Game Freak company, and they put the Mew in the game like after the game testing was out for glitches, which was kind of very unsafe to do because that could cause loads of glitches, and I think it actually did cause a glitch in the game. But it was put in the game 2 weeks before the game was actually finished in development, so therefore it was put in very late, and no one was meant to know about it other than the Game Freak company. And the Nintendo company, who Game Freak was part of, didn't even know that they put Mew in, which was the craziest thing. But of course it got out, and people found out about Mew, and you know, we all know what Mew is now, of course. But oddly enough, even though the Game Freak wanted to keep that a secret, and did keep it a secret even from Nintendo, Mew was actually the first Pokemon of the Pokemon franchise to actually get trademarked. It even got trademarked before the name Pocket Monsters, which was the name of the Pokemon company, which was quite odd, to be honest. The Pokemon part of the company was actually got a trademark before the company name itself, which was really odd, to be honest, especially when it was meant to be a secret Pokemon. Which is a really interesting thing. But another thing that's quite interesting with the first game, and something you might know, is that Gary's Raticate is the only Pokemon known in the Pokemon series to have actually died. It's not definite that he will have died, but what happens in the first game is that Gary has a Raticate in the first couple battles you have with him in his team. But afterwards, after you've seen in the Pokemon Tower, he doesn't have a Raticate. And the Pokemon Tower is actually where dead Pokemon go to rest, and a lot of people thought because of this that Gary actually went to bury his Raticate in there. And to be honest, I kind of agree with that. which is another harsh thing about the Pokemon game, but I think Game Freak's and Nintendo are trying to cover it up because it's supposed to be a kids game. It will be kind of disturbing for kids, but it's quite an interesting idea, and I've always kind of went along and thought, yeah, that was the real thing. Another thing that you'll probably know, but has another side to it, is that Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan are based off two karate sort of, or two martial arts artists or whatever. Hitmonlee is based off Bruce Lee, and Hitmonchan's based off Jackie Chan. But the interesting thing you won't know is that it's the same in Japanese, but with different martial artists. So the Japanese name for Hitmonlee is sorry if I get this pronounced wrong, it's Soamolar or something, and this was based off the kickboxer Tadashi Somura or something like that. And Hitmonchan's name in Japanese is Ebiwalar, and it was based off the boxer Hiroyuki Ebihara, something like that. But yeah, it was interesting to find out that it was based off different martial artists in Japan. Another interesting thing about the first generation is that there was only 37 sound clips for the Pokemon. Only 37 were used for their voices, for the cries, and there was 151 Pokemon. Therefore, a lot of them were repeated and played in different ways, which was quite clever of them to do, but that's why a few of the voices, well, a lot of the cries will be similar. Professor Oak, who's the professor of the first generation, is actually the most appearing professor in the different generations. He appears in the first, second, the fourth generation, and I think he's mentioned he might be mentioned in the third generation. I'm not too sure though. But yeah, the other professors are only really mentioned in either one or two generations, so that's quite interesting. He's the most popular and common professor. And also, his name is actually, his full name is Samuel Oak. And the way this actually information came from the Pokemon Forever, when Ash actually met Professor Oak when he was younger, when he went back in time. Or, sorry, when Professor Oak actually came forward in time from the past. So that was sort of a quite an interesting movie. So you can go watch that. I've actually had the movie since I was quite young. It was my first Pokemon movie I actually had. So yeah, you could see Professor Oak when he was younger there. His name is Samuel. And Bill, who is the sort of the computer box maker of the first generation, is actually also the sort of also has that role in most games. He's the person with that role that appears in most games, like Professor Oak, who has the role of Professor, appears in most games. Bill's the computer maker that appears in most roles. That appears in most games. So that's another interesting thing, that the first generation had a lot of repeating characters. He was actually given away a few sort of facts about him by someone who was obsessed with him in either Heart Gold, Soul Silver, or the original Gold and Silver, who called you and told you a few things about him, one of them being that it was lactose intolerant. I don't even know why you would need to know that Bill was lactose intolerant, but yeah, we know that Bill is lactose intolerant, which is a really, really weird fact, but he is. He also loves the evolutions, which is why I love him, because I love the evolutions too. So let's move on to the question of the week. So this week's question of the week isn't really a question as such, but before, when I was looking for facts on the first generation, I came across a website that sort of did a quiz of the first generation to see how much you know under a timer of 15 minutes. So it puts like little sort of hints on the side, and you type in what Pokemon, what trainer, what town, etc. And I decided to give this a go, and wasn't really sure what it would come up with, and I got 124 points altogether. So see if you can beat me. That's kind of the question. Comment down below what you get. Tell me what you get. But don't kind of go over it loads and loads of times and then tell me what you've got, because that's kind of cheating. Because I just went on it and kind of did it straight off and decided not to redo it, so I got 124. So tell me what you get, and I want to say thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.